I read 57 books in 2024, and these are the 16 I'd recommend. Kind of this combination of enjoyment, resonance, and also approachability, because some of these books, say in spirituality, may not be as approachable if you haven't done some exploring on your own. So, if you're interested in the entire list, I will post some Notion list or something, which you can check out in the description below. Otherwise, these are the 16 that I'd recommend, and I'm going to be breaking them into categories: morning reads, which includes poetry, spirituality, fiction, purpose, relating, and memoir. And this is a pretty holistic view of how I read, how I like to read. I don't particularly stick to one genre or another. I find it's important for myself just to read across the entire spectrum and also just for different intentions, which I'll talk about as well. Because sometimes I just want to read for pleasure. Sometimes I am reading to actively learn or to contemplate. So my recommendations are a reflection of this. So I also don't have all these books in physical copy because I was traveling for a lot of 2024, so I have a lot of ebooks. So I'm going to be showing the covers on my iPad. Hopefully it's not blown out. But to start with morning reads, and the intent with these, at least how they show up in my life, is they're quick reads. You read a page or two, and there's just something to sit with and to see what stirs in you. If you like to journal, they're a great place to start, but just something to start to contemplate in the day. And the first book is called The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, which here's the cover. And this book is awesome. Essentially, it is a dictionary of sorts, articulating words, or rather, experiences of being human that don't have a word to them. So the author created all of these words to capture these essential human experiences. And I'll read you a few. And also, for context, across the books that I recommend, I'm going to take some time just to read some quotes that I personally found really meaningful. So the first word is anoscesia, the anxiety of not knowing the real you. Xenosign, the feeling that time is getting faster. Ozuri, feeling torn between the life you want and the life you have. Yu Yi, the longing to feel things intensely again. And this is a long one. Etherness, the wistful feeling of looking around a gathering of loved ones, all too aware that even though the room is filled with warmth and laughter now, it won't always be this way. The coming years will steadily break people away into their own families or see them pass away one by one until there comes a time when you will look back and try to imagine what it felt like to have everyone together in the same place. Like, damn, yeah, you do not have a word to capture that. That is an entire paragraph that you need to capture. And gosh, I mean, I feel like a lot of these words capture what it's like to be in your 20s and figuring out life. Yeah, this book is great. I really enjoyed this one. I've got a few books of poetry I'd recommend. Poetry is just awesome. I mean, similar to the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, poetry is able to really articulate something about our human experience that you or I may not be able to, and maybe not as beautifully or eloquently. And I spent a lot of last year reading the mystical poets, Rumi, Hafiz, and Kabir, and these are the books that reflect that. Just in general, I mean, the mystical poets, the Sufi poets, they just have a way with words of really just piercing to the heart. And these are some of the poems that really hit me. The first is from Rumi's little book of life. What is strange, my friend, is you not seeking the beyond. You are a being of light, yet your heart is shrouded in darkness. You are gold melting in the furnace, yet you still search for gold. Yeah. The second one is Songs of Kabir. The musk is in the deer, but it seeks it not within itself. It wanders in the quest of grass. And I'm not going to tell you what the meaning is, because there is no right or wrong meaning. There is no singular meaning. There's only the alchemy of our own individual lived experience and how it interacts with the words of these poets. And then we have The Gift, poems by Hafiz. I've got two here. I am a hole in a flute that the Christ's breath moves through. Listen to this music. Art is the conversation between lovers. Art offers an opening for the heart. True art makes the divine silence in the soul break into applause. Great way to start your day. And next we've got books on spirituality, which not much to say here, but to me spirituality is about just living life intimately, as close, as non-separate to your direct experience as possible, right? The essence of our beingness and our experience. So the first book is Siddhartha, and this is a book that may be of interest to you if you're at all interested in Eastern spirituality, particularly Buddhism, but just in general what it's like to be on the spiritual path. And a quote that I want to highlight from this book is, "When someone is searching," said Siddhartha, "that it might easily happen that the only thing his eyes still see is that what he searches for, that he is unable to find anything, to let anything enter his mind, because he always thinks of nothing but the object of his search, because he has a goal, because he is obsessed by the goal. Searching means having a goal, but finding means being free, being open, having no goal. You, O Venerable One, are perhaps indeed a searcher, because, striving for your goal, there are many things you don't see, which are directly in front of your eyes." So, this is a great book. It's told in story form. It's less direct pointing as some other books on spirituality may be. So, if you're looking for a story that's filled with wisdom, then Siddhartha is a great place to start. The next book is Living Untethered by Michael Singer. Michael Singer is awesome. He writes in a really fun, just kind of conversational way. It really sounds like he's just saying all this directly to you. And even if you're not at all interested in spirituality, I find that reading books like these just give you something to sit with, you know, just consider for even a moment. And yeah, there's a lot of truth and wisdom here. The first quote is, "People are trying to use the outside to fix the inside. Better to find out why it's not nice inside to begin with. You suffer when the moment in front of you is not the way you want, and you rejoice when it matches your preferences. This is because of something you are bringing into the moment. It is not something intrinsic to the moment itself. All moments in the universe are simply moments in the universe. You are the one bringing personal preferences into these impersonal moments and making them seem personal." Yeah. So, now fiction. What else do I have to say but please read fiction. I used to read a lot of nonfiction when I started reading again after a long hiatus, because I was really focused on productivity, improvement, and we typically associate nonfiction with that. But Gosh, fiction is just so incredible. If anything, it has a way of having a more profound impact on you than reading something that you know, cognitively learn, you know. Fiction really has a way of bringing you into a story, into a world, and all of the experiences and lessons that come with the character you're traveling with. Not to mention, and speak to this on one of the books I recommend, it has a way of bringing you to this really beautiful place, this way of being that is not all too familiar in our day-to-day lives, especially if you're an adult. Yeah, I'll speak more to that in a moment. But the first book is A Tale for the Time Being by Ruth Ozeki. She is an incredible, incredible author. I'm just noticing how the sun is clouded right now, and I'm wondering how this is going to show up if it's really dark. We'll see. Ruth is just wow. I mean, for one, she is just an incredible writer. Her language is beautiful. The way this book is written is it's very meta. It's like between different characters, and it's told in a really, yeah, gosh, it's like a really fun way. I really appreciate it. And you know, Ruth is a Zen priest, so there's a lot of Zen influence here, which resonated with me. But regardless of if you have any of that interest or inclination, it's a beautiful book. There's a lot of wisdom and just beautiful writing going on here. And here are some of the quotes. But I think it means that nothing in the world is solid or real because nothing is permanent. In all things, including trees and animals and pebbles and mountains and rivers and even me and you, are just kind of flowing through for the time being. Ruth looked more closely at the letters. They were round and a little bit sloppy, as she now imagined the girl must be too, but they stood more or less upright and marched gamely across the page at a good clip. Not in a hurry, but not dawdling either. Sometimes at the end of a line, they crowded each other a little, like people jostling to get onto an elevator or into a subway car, just as the doors were closing. Yeah. Next book, or rather books, Harry Potter. I made an entire video on this, which you can check out if you're interested. But in short, reading Harry Potter brought me back to a childlike way of being that was so special, and I've never had quite an experience reading it. So, highly recommend. If you want to hear more, check out that video. The next book is The Overstory. This book, I mean, for one, it's just beautifully written. Richard Powers, yeah, what a guy. Great writing, and also just a really powerful message. I mean, not to ruin the book, but it's a lot of short stories that ultimately connect in the end and revolve around a relationship with trees or just in general the natural world. And personally, I didn't grow up super outdoorsy. My family wasn't really about that. But reading this book really made me deepen my appreciation of the natural world, especially trees. So, some of the quotes, I mean, the first one isn't really, it's about trees, but not. But it really struck me. What is it worth to be looked at without judgment for as long as you need? Hmm? And then not little, each of the world's 750 species of ficus has its own unique wasp tailored to fertilize it. And this one wasp somehow found the precise fig species of her destiny. The foundress laid her eggs and died. The fruit that she fertilized became her tomb. I was just, there were so many little bits in the book like this that just blew my mind. and just really just points to the wonder of the natural world, of life itself, and it gave me a deeper appreciation and sense of participation in it. Yeah. Now we have books on purpose, which to me it's a fundamental question. It is very similar to the quote I just read about nature. Everything in nature has a purpose, a unique ecological niche or role it fits into, just as we as human beings individually do, whether we realize it or not. And purpose to me evokes the Mary Oliver line, or what am I to do with this one wild and precious life? And that's not what she said, but it's the question I'm asking. And the first book is The Journey of Soul Initiation by Bill Plotkin. Bill, what a guy. Bill, also what a guy. Incredible. Yeah, this book is about basically laying out the kind of like a map for the territory of, let's just say, being on your journey towards your soul's purpose and the deepening that happens there. I hadn't come across any book quite like this that covers the developmental process and also the actual journey itself into the canyon, as he calls it, which for a lot of people is an existential crisis. Had one myself, so it resonates. It's just such a beautiful book, and I find that there's such a potency to reading books that are really infused with soul. Let's just call it that. Falling in love with the miracle of the world is a way to crack yourself open, enabling you to fall into the soul's terrain. This also triggers grief. Your heartache from the losses our world suffers at the hands of our mostly asleep species, and your sorrow over how much beauty you failed to notice before. That the universe is, in essence, an artist, and each individual human has been shaped with a capacity to mature into one of its works of art, as has every other creature. And, I'll say briefly here, so I'm just going to move this a little bit. Oh, excuse me. I'll say briefly here that Bill is pointing to what he calls the mythopoetic identity, where each of us has a mythopoetic purpose, one that is a metaphor or an image, just as much as, say, a salmon or an oak tree does. So, the next book is by Parker J. Palmer, who is a Quaker educator. It's called Let Your Life Speak. This book is just, I challenge you to read it and not just be moved, to not be called to search for something more. It's a really great book on what he calls vocation. Another word for the expression of purpose, if you want to call it that. There's so many quotes I could have picked, and I'll probably make a video on this book alone. The one I'd like to share with you goes, "We arrive in this world with birthright gifts. Then we spend the first half of our lives abandoning them or letting others disabuse of them. As young people, we are surrounded by expectations that may have little to do with who we really are, expectations held by people who are not trying to discern our selfhood, but to fit us into slots." That really resonates as a young person and as someone who has been on a journey the last few years of pursuing or being led by this question of purpose. What am I to do with this one wild and precious life? And to really serve as the faithful expression of it. Next, we have books which I'll call relating. How do I relate to oneself, myself, which therein affects how I relate to other people. And I personally feel it's important to read books like these because how we show up in the world, and more importantly, how we show up for other people, is really affected by how we are with ourselves. And, on the even on the question of purpose, right? There isn't anything necessarily grandiose you need to do. You don't need to be a doctor or I don't know, a therapist or a firefighter or whatever it may be, but simply by being yourself, by being able to relate to yourself and others in a way that is loving, that is without judgment, without violence, absolutely has ripple effects that we can't even quite imagine or measure, quite honestly. So, yeah. And ultimately, it's about deepening your relationship with yourself, which is really important. The first book is No Bad Parts by Richard Swartz, the founder of the school of therapy called Internal Family Systems. It is an incredible introductory book into parts work, into IFS. I'll say more on this another time, but parts work really changed how I relate to myself and opened up a wellspring of love, grace, and compassion for myself that I didn't previously fully understand or experience firsthand in my body. And that is translated over into how I relate to other people, of course. So, really short quote. There are no bad parts, only parts needing healing. Next, we have, and this might be more of a niche book, it's called Focusing in Clinical Practice, The Essence of Change. And this book is covering a topic called focusing. It is a technique that is the basis of a lot of modalities of therapy, but essentially it is a way of staying with what is called the felt sense in the body, the interaction between the body and life. And in short, it's a way to really deepen into the richness of your experience in a way that is more than we typically use in day-to-day language. Felt sense could be, let's say, and I've experienced this before, where I might be experiencing the emotion of shame, and I'll really feel like I'll be in this posture, and it'll feel like I've got someone just like placing their foot against my neck. That's the felt sense. And focusing is also just like a philosophy. The founder, Eugene Gendlin, himself is a philosopher, and it reflects in the principles of focusing. So, some of the quotes here. Something that is alive is always in process, always taking in, always responding, always changing the direction of further life. Life doesn't stand still. There's always something next. And what is next emerges from what came before in a very particular way. Yeah. And even if you're not, say, training to be, I don't know, to work with people, even just having a little bit of understanding of focusing can be really valuable in terms of being able to explore your own experience and also being able to facilitate someone else's exploration as well. To be able to have this basic skill set can be a really tremendous gift to a friend, family member, or someone you come across who's having a difficult time or just needs to feel through something. The next book is Nonviolent Communication, Language of Life. This book is great for someone who grew up in a household where violent communication was quite the norm. And to summarize, I mean, this is my take on violent communication, but violent communication is typically, I mean, for one, it causes harm, and it may not be physical, but emotional. It's language that creates moralistic judgments of right and wrong, which ultimately create the emotions of shame and guilt. It's used to coerce people. It, it essentially denies someone the authenticity of their experience. So, nonviolent communication is a way of communicating with people in a way that is actively attuned to their needs, and you're speaking from your needs, listening to needs. There's a lot more to the actual approach that I won't go into, but here's a quote. the more people are trained to think in terms of moralistic judgments that imply wrongness and badness, the more they are being trained to look outside themselves, to outside authorities, for the definition of what constitutes right, wrong, good, and bad. When we are in contact with our feelings and needs, we humans no longer make good slaves and underlings. Yeah. It's something I'm still actively practicing. I have a long ways to go in terms of actually being able to communicate regularly in a nonviolent manner. But even reading the book itself has, because it's not just about communicating is a two-way thing, both what you say and how you listen and receive. And even just reading the book has helped me listen more closely for what is the need that is being served or met here when someone is speaking, even if it comes across as harsh or abrasive. There's always a need being served here, and this goes well with internal family systems. There is a part being served here by this form of communication. Also, I'm really cognizant of just how bright it is, and I hope it's not super aggressive, but I'm going to just shift a little bit more. Bear with me. Now, books on memoirs. I read a lot of memoirs. Memoirs are great. They're a way to be able to experience someone else's life and just hear their story and really understand what it's like for, as close as you can, what it's like for someone to go through something that you may never experience. And I find that memoirs are just a tremendous source of wisdom. There's something that we can all find a piece of in ourselves because ultimately memoirs are just stories of human experience. And they're a great way just to, yeah, I mean, connect more deeply with yourself, connect more deeply with others. Yeah. So the first one is called The Unwinding of the Miracle. This might be one of my favorite books from last year. It is, of all the memoirs I've ever read, it is the most raw. And it's reflected in some of these quotes. I, I had, ugh, I have 5 quotes down here. It might take me a while to, I'll pick a few of them. Otherwise, read the book. The first one, numbness initially protects you from the crushing power of forever. I'm tired of feeling the strain of living as normal a life as possible under the constant threat of death, of combating the jealousy and anger upon seeing the grandmother who has the privilege of taking her grandson to school, and the envy upon hearing another mother's carefree laughter with her friends, of feeling the hatred of the woman whom Josh will marry after I am gone, who will live in the home that I designed and have the honor of raising my beautiful children, who will hang her dresses in my closet, who will steal the life that should have been mine. One day, you'll wake up and you won't remember my face easily anymore. You won't remember my smell anymore. You won't remember if I liked chocolate ice cream or not. You won't remember so many things that you might have once thought you could never forget. Or maybe you failed to think of me for 1 hour or 2 or 3, or for a day. You may even stop visiting me at my gravesite with any regularity. I want you to know that that is okay, that that is how it should be, that that is how I want it to be. Yeah. Next book is Dying to Be Me. It is a book about a woman who has a near-death experience. I would say with this book, it's incredibly woo, and if you are a bit resistant or hesitant towards that, I would encourage you to, well, not read the book if it really brings up that much resistance in you. But if you are, it'd be lovely if you could just, keep an open mind, when reading this and recognize that ultimately every human being's experience is their truth. There's no such thing as a wrong experience. All we have is our own individual experience and how we, yeah, what our what our view of what has happened is, the meaning we bring to it. So this book, I mean, I have so many underlines, but it just, if anything, it just made me feel just so assured and affirmed in the unfolding of life. Each one of us is like a single thread in a huge tapestry, woven in a complex and colorful pattern. We may be only one strand, yet we're all integral to the finished image. We affect the lives of others just by choosing whether or not to be true to ourselves. Our only obligation to others, our only purpose, is to express our uniqueness and allow others to do the same. We all have our own way of recognizing that infinite space within us, and for some it may be prayer, for others it can be music, art, being in nature, or even pursuing knowledge and technology. Whatever brings out our passion, creativity, and purpose for living. So, those are the 16 books I'd recommend you check out from all those I read in 2024. And if you do, I would love to hear from you, whether by email, DM, comments, whatever. I would love to hear your experiences of them, or if you've already read some of them. Either way, please let me know. Stay in touch. And once again, I will publish the full list of the 57 I read if you're curious at all. But otherwise, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you for bearing with me with this irregular lighting and everything. It really means a lot to me. And until next time, I'm grateful. I appreciate you. And have a lovely rest of your day.